The construction phase of the tabernacle is over. The blueprints are executed, the materials assembled, and the structure sits in the desert waiting to be activated. It is about to transition from a static project into a continuously humming operational system. The precise sequence for this activation is documented in the first Aliyah of Parshat Beha'alotecha, spanning verses 1 through 14 of Numbers chapter 8. The narrative begins with a sharp pivot. The previous chapter detailed 12 exhaustive days of grand dedication offerings from the tribal princes. Now the text moves to the daily, repetitive maintenance of the Menorah. A second shift follows immediately. The narrative moves from the metallurgical architecture of the Menorah straight into a mass physical purification sequence for the Levite workers. Administrative commands like these are often viewed as disjointed tasks appended to the end of the tabernacle's completion. Classical rabbinic commentary, specifically the work of Rashi, rejects that view. In his methodology, abrupt transitions and structural anomalies are critical data points. Rashi's linguistic analysis shows that these verses are highly ordered. They document the exact sequential activation of the tabernacle's physical, spiritual, and human infrastructure. The first textual anomaly is one of juxtaposition. Rashi asks why the command to light the menorah is placed immediately after the exhaustive list of the prince's tribal offerings. He answers by identifying Aaron's psychological state. According to the Midrashic tradition Rashi cites, Aaron felt excluded because neither he nor the tribe of Levi had participated in the tribal dedication. God's response directly addresses this distress, establishing that Aaron's operational mandate carries more weight than the prince's one-off physical donations. The text signals this through a specific lexical choice in verse 2. Instead of using a standard verb for kindling a fire, God uses the word Behaalotecha, which literally translates to when you make rise. This schematic charts the difference. The prince's offerings represent a linear energy spike, but Rashi defines Behaalotecha as a technical requirement for a feedback loop. The priest must kindle the wick until the flame ascends entirely on its own. Aaron's instruction is to engineer a permanent, self-sustaining mechanism. The text defines spiritual service as the rigorous daily maintenance of a continuous system, rather than a grand singular gesture. Verses 2 through 4 shift focus to the engineering constraints required to house this light. The menorah must be constructed as a Miksha. This Hebrew term denotes hammered work, derived from a single contiguous block of gold. The diagram illustrates the constraint. The menorah could not be assembled from modular parts. It was chiseled intact, hammered out from its base, the uraka, all the way up to its delicate petal, or pirka. The wicks themselves face a rigid operational directive. The 3 eastern lamps and the 3 western lamps cannot project light outward. They must point inward, toward the central shaft. Rashi provides the rationale for this hardware design. It proactively counters the assumption that the divine requires physical illumination from humans. By forcing the wicks to face inward, this closed-loop light architecture physically hardwires the concept of divine self-sufficiency directly into the sanctuary. Verse 3 concludes this section with a simple statement, "And Aaron did so." Rashi interprets this detail as a mark of Aaron's absolute precision. He followed the blueprint exactly, without a single deviation. Physical design is theology. Deviating from the physical parameters of the menorah would corrupt the theological reality it represents. With the physical technology active, verses 6 through 8 initiate the human infrastructure, the Levites. Moses is commanded to purify them through an extreme ritual sequence, which includes sprinkling them with waters of purification and shaving their entire bodies with a razor. These highly specific requirements belong to the legal category of the Metzora, or the leper. This legal flowchart tracks the insight of Rabbi Moses, the preacher, cited by Rashi. He maps out a chain of spiritual substitution. Step 1 establishes that the Levites are direct systemic replacements for the displaced firstborns, who originally held the priestly duties. Step 2 traces why the firstborns forfeited that status. They incurred a systemic debt through their participation in the idolatry of the golden calf. Step 3 applies the legal equivalence. Rabbinic law defines idolatry as spiritual death, and a leper is legally defined as being akin to the dead. The Levites must undergo the leper's shaving ritual to clear the inherited systemic spiritual debt of the firstborns they are replacing. The Levites are legally calibrated expiation mechanisms required to balance a national transgression before they can assume their roles. The final phase of their initiation occurs in verse 11, where Aaron is commanded to wave the Levites. The Hebrew term is Tenufah, an elevation or wave offering, an action reserved almost exclusively for animal sacrifices. The command requires manipulating living, breathing human beings as if they were sacrificial objects. Verse 10 reinforces this. The Israelites are instructed to lay their hands on the Levites, mirroring the exact legal mechanism used to transfer liability onto a sacrificial animal. Rashi observes a textual redundancy here. The command to wave the Levites is explicitly stated 3 distinct times in this section, as shown in this schematic of the tabernacle courtyard. Rashi maps the first Tenufah to the Kohathite family, connecting them to their specific burden of carrying the most holy vessels, like the ark and the table. The second targets the Gershonite family, linking them to the holy hangings and perimeter curtains. The third Tenufah designates the Merarite family, assigning them to the heavy structural boards and sockets. This waving ritual is calibrated to their precise divisions of labor. It finalizes their transformation into functional offerings. The tabernacle is now fully active, standing as a glowing epicenter of energy, functioning in the dark desert. The first Aliyah of Behaalotecha accomplishes a dual activation: the self-sustaining divine light of the Menorah and the consecrated, load-bearing human labor of the Levites. Rashi's methodology proves that these two systems are mutually dependent. The structure cannot function without both operating at peak legal and physical precision. The text provides a highly ordered architectural blueprint for the tabernacle's daily life. In classical exegesis, macrotheology is completely reliant on microtextual analysis. The architecture of a divine system is found in details as small as the conjugation of a single verb. The final state of the actors is set. Aaron maintains the autonomous flame, and the Levites stand as legally cleared, living substitutions. The biblical text refuses to separate physical, procedural commands from deep theological reality. Parshat Beha'alotecha provides the precise technical specifications required to sustain a functional, living sanctuary right in the center of the camp.